Hey guys, welcome back to City Skylines. Today the main thing which I'll be working on is this rest area over here, and that'll take quite a while, though not that long. Another thing which I'll be working on in this episode is another interchange, which I'm actually really happy with how it came out in the end. And there's also a bit of adding some farm fields. I did cut out some of the field making process, since it's really most of the most time-consuming thing that I was working on at this point in time, and really what most of my gameplay turned out to be. And it's a bit boring and repetitive to actually get into it, but I still want to keep some of it in the videos, but it's by far the biggest amount of work. I should also say about this video that I didn't really prepare the commentary as much as I usually do in any case. I don't think I ever talked about this in any video, but I usually make like a topic list of stuff that I can talk about in the video and things I want to mention, but I sort of don't have that much time at the moment, so I'm just doing this in one go, and I only very quickly check the video for what's actually happening, so I'm sure I'll manage somehow, but I don't know, it might not be as good as it usually is, or as I would like to make it. Anyway, to talk about the rest area for a second here. It's a very general rest area. I didn't really particularly base it on any real one, though I did find out, a couple of people told me that it looks very similar to one which exists on the border between Belgium and the Netherlands, near Breda, which it actually turns out to be very similar to, but it isn't really based on any specific one. I just wanted to make sure I got the petrol station in there. And in this case, I just wanted to use a double one and have them slightly overlapped to make it seem like it's one building, because you really find that these highway rest area petrol stations are just much larger than the inner city and small road ones that you find, which I couldn't really find a large petrol station, at least not at the time. I'm not sure if they really exist at the moment, but I figured that was the best way to overcome that problem. I also wanted to have a number of small restaurants, some fast food chains over here, and of course the parking spots for all of the truck drivers. And that's also one of the reasons, or some of the reasons, why I wanted to have this here. I didn't really have many highway services yet in the city, and along the city itself the highway is very compact and there isn't much space left, so I definitely couldn't do it there. And you do find these rest areas quite commonly in the middle of these polders, with not too many towns very close by, so I figured this would be a pretty good area to at least place it. Even if it doesn't work out that well within the city, it's definitely good practice, because it's something that I would like to add to all of my highways, at least at certain points, because you realistically can't go without these things, at least not every once in a while. There are still a couple of other things about the realism aspect of highways, like actually having barriers on or guardrails on the side of the road, which is something I wish I could do, and I do have some guardrail objects, but it would just take such a massive amount of time to actually do it, so I don't think I'll go into that. But just having a rest area seemed like a fun thing to do, and a good way to get at least a bit of extra realism in there, and a good practice for any type of other highway services, like the very small rest areas without any big restaurants or any petrol stations, but you know, just the general parking places. It's also something that I might want to get into in the future, and at least it's good practice for. And the other side of this, well, this thing basically is going to just mirror the other side as well. It's a little bit more compact, since I did have that little road on the other side there, and I think I just got one restaurant in on this side and just added the bridge in between them, as you commonly see, to make sure that, you know, you can still visit the restaurants on the other side and don't have to place two of the same restaurants on both sides. Aside from that though, yeah, it's a very standard rest area. Speaking of the dike though, I made a pretty bad mistake over there, and that is that I actually broke up the dikes just to make room for the highway, which makes no sense, because the dikes are to polder off one certain polder and make sure that it doesn't flood and all the water stays within that polder. And it's very strange to actually cut through a dike with a highway. It should at least go over it, so that's a pretty dumb mistake that I might need to correct at some point in the future. Another thing which I feel I really have to nitpick, and I just really want to nitpick on my own work in general, is that well, I wouldn't really call it work, I'm just playing a game, but it's that these parking lots just turn out much larger than they really should have been, which was really the issue of placing the parking lots before I placed the trucks, because I had an idea that the trucks were a little bit larger than this, so I was placing down the parking spots being like, well, this is probably going to be a pretty good size and fit very neatly, and then the trucks turn out to be quite a lot smaller in scale than I actually thought they were, so that doesn't work out too well. So yeah, definitely there is a lot more room on the parking spaces. Another issue there is that I can't realistically use the same asphalt as the road for the parking spaces, just because you don't have parking spaces that work like this in the game, which makes it a little less realistic, because obviously you wouldn't have parking spaces on the pavement like you're pretty much forced to do. And I would just love to have it on asphalt, but that's just a nitpick I can't really do much about. Aside from that though, I do get some comments about the fact that I always criticize my own stuff in videos. It's not to say that I think it's completely bad, and I still love making these videos, and really the in-game recording most of all things, but it's just I don't want to not criticize myself, because there's always something to improve, and I really do feel like if you can't criticize yourself, you can't really improve. The best way to improve, at least, is to basically tell yourself that your own stuff is shit. So yeah, that's the idea behind that. And aside from that, I just wanted to dress this area up a little bit, not going too in-depth in that, but I did want to add some simple foliage here and there, and some very small objects, and also have a couple of houses, a few small farms over here, though definitely not anything too spectacular. Perhaps one of the issues that I could throw up is that this canal over here, and I'm not entirely sure how I should fix it at some point in the future. I definitely don't think keys will do the job, because it's much more realistic to just have grassy walls on the side of a canal in the Netherlands. But it's a canal which generally looks quite unrealistic. It came with the map, and it actually went on in a straight curve much longer than it currently does. I did go back and, I believe it was off screen, change the canal, since it was pretty much just 100% straight, and the same was going for the highway next to it, and that was really just extremely unrealistic. But it's still a very large, wide, straight canal, which is something which you don't really see, at least not looking like this. Anyway, I also wanted to have a small town next to this area. I do want to make it a little bit larger in the future. I mean, in this episode, I'll already add some farms and fields around this town, but in the future I do want to make it a little bit bigger, with just a smaller, newer neighborhood with row houses as well, since at the moment it's basically just a pretty standard town with just some random houses, but no really newer developments and no row houses, in a sense that I feel I could add to it just to make it a little bit bulkier of a town. I don't know, it just really seemed like the type of place where I wanted to have a small town like this. And the rest of the area though is still going to be pretty sparsely populated, and just be a pretty big number of polders with just farming fields and things like that, which is definitely going to be by far the majority of this part of the map. And partly I do like it, but it is definitely going to be quite repetitive in terms of making the videos, since there's a lot of this farm making stuff. Hence why I did want to cut out some of it in this video. But I think it's also a good time to talk about the future of the city, because truth be told, I'm not entirely sure about the future of this city. Something to keep in mind is that this episode is recorded quite a while ago. I don't exactly remember how much time it was, but it's approximately 3 weeks, I think. So it's quite a long time ago. It's actually more than 3 weeks, easily more than 3 weeks, just over 4 weeks, I think. And I am commentating this actually just before it's uploaded. So I do sort of have the newest updates and parts of the game in mind. Speaking of that, it might actually be 5 weeks. Perhaps even more, I'm not entirely sure anymore. But yeah, this was recorded just before the key updates. That's basically something which I'm trying to say, and I'm not entirely sure how much time that was ago. But it's basically that this was recorded at a time when the game was still different than what it is right now. But I'm commentating over this with knowing what we have at the moment, which is why it doesn't feel very synchronized in that way, because there are certain things where I even look back and think I could have changed certain things. And the reason why I want to talk about this is that even though I said that I would sort of take this city to the end, I feel like there's been a point now where it feels like it's a bit outdated. There are new houses which some people have made. Even some people have uploaded or at least actually commented on my videos if I would like to see more Dutch houses, and actually got some replies and some Dutch houses in the workshop just because of that, which is really awesome. But I feel like this city is in general just becoming outdated, not just in terms of like having new content, but also I've just gotten better at making things while recording this city, and I've gotten more than double the amount of hours in City Skylines since I started recording this, which is also counting all the countless hours that I didn't record for this specific city, or that I recorded for this city but off screen. So I feel like this is a point where I might actually, you know, call this series an end, at least without it being 100% completely finished and filling the map as I originally intended to, because it also turned out to be quite, taking quite much longer actually than I expected to take for this. And the reason why is because, and I've thought about this quite a lot, but I think I'd rather start something new than just stay stuck in this city, just for the hell of finishing this. Because even though this might look really awesome and things finished, I think it might just be better to try some projects which are smaller in scale, try different types of cities, because I have so many ideas for different types of cities that I want to try but sort of don't really get to, because this series is more or less holding me back in that way. So yeah, basically I feel like I might want to step into new territory, and I may make a new Dutch city at some point in the future. There are also some plans that I have for an Alpine city, or perhaps a planned economic city, much like the one in Tunisia, or a city like Qatar. But those are just ideas that I want to play with, and the reasons why I might end this series in, I'm not entirely sure how many episodes, but just wrap it up at some point soon in the future. So yeah, just so you know, there are definitely some other plans that I have, and that's just something which I felt I really wanted to talk about. Anyway, I also wanted to have this intersection over here, which is, I think, really my favorite intersection of the city so far. It's a combination of a diamond and a clover leaf, just to have this little regional road connect to all the farms and the smaller towns which I want to have in the future, with the highway over here. And it's actually gonna be a somewhat important road in the future, because even though it won't take that much traffic at the moment, it'll take quite a lot actually at some point in the future, because I basically want to extend this area into what is now the upper part of the screen, where I want to add lots of stuff as well, but not so much the polders and simple farms that I have in this area. But I want to try to make a new town with some new stuff, just to experiment with new ideas. So there will actually be a small camping with caravans and stuff like that, and some small chalets as well in that part of the city, or that part of the region I should probably say. And it's also where at some point, though this is gonna be a bit further away I think, I'll try to add some flower fields in a very inefficient way. Even though there are flower fields on the workshop, I wanted to make flower fields myself, just to get the colors and shapes entirely right, which turned out to be quite a time-consuming thing, but actually something which is pretty cool. Though, looking back at it, in future reference, I may want to use some flower fields instead, and just get that over with pretty quickly. And at some point in the future, though that is way further in the future, I'll work on a theme park in that area. And that's something which I most recently recorded, and something which I am really looking forward to show, because it's something which turned out better really, I think, in hindsight than I expected, and really feels like coming home almost, the thing that I'm most used to, and which is actually surprisingly well possible in this game. But yeah, that is just everything about the future, as I was filling in these farms over here just to make sure that that was all alright. I think I'll get to the foliage at some point in the future, just off screen. Especially adding all of the different tree lines is gonna get pretty boring pretty quickly. And I'm even glad that I've been using the resources as the terra painting just to make this look like farms, because as much as I do like the assets that are out there to have textures for farms on your farm fields, it's just something that is way less user-friendly, since it would take even more time than what it currently does. And it's also something which is just less flexible in terms of shapes and such. And I liked the wheat fields with the little round wheat crops, which you can basically place a lot of in one field to make a wheat field kind of thing, but it's also very time consuming and pretty painful in performance as well, and something which I don't really feel the need for too much. It's just that this general area is made to make the more important parts feel like they're actually situated in Holland. So this isn't really the focus of the city, it's just that I want to have these polders around the cities and the more interesting parts of this entire area to make it feel like it's actually in a realistic setting, and not have it be located in the middle of an empty grassland, because I'm not sure if I really said this before. I may have well done that, but I always forget what I say in videos and what I say in streams. But one of my issues still with this game is that even if you're starting out on a new map, you start out in a completely new map, like you're in some sort of uninhabited space with just a railway and a highway. And it would just be really cool to start out with an already sort of developed map and have some farms here and there, but actually also some small towns, as you realistically see when you'd start out having a city. Like, you really start in the middle of nowhere, which is just not a realistic thing simulation-wise, and it makes it a very time-consuming thing to actually make the realistic surroundings of a city, which is just a personal preference, really. I do think it's a pretty common complaint, though, really, about this type of game, and I definitely get why they wouldn't add it, since it just makes things so much more complicated. But it's just something that I kind of lack in the game at the moment, and just one of the reasons why I want to spend so much time myself getting all these fields and areas around the cities in, even though I don't really care about it too much, and I won't have any like close-up shots of these fields just for the hell of it. Though it is still kind of fun to make them, or at least surprisingly not boring, I would say. It's just there as a general backdrop of the bigger parts and the city itself, really. And this is also the type of thing that I would just like to get into more if at some point in the future, and it's gonna be at some soon point in the future, I decide to just leave the city as it is at the moment and just leave it as a really good learning experience and as a lot of fun, but move on to certain things. The last thing I would like to do to wrap it up is not add any new things or add a new city district or actually even get into a harbor. I think that's not even that well planned in this city, but I just want to have some quick fields just around the areas which I have at the moment to make them seem like they're situated in a realistic Dutch setting, or at least try to do so, and just really leave it there, because as much as I have had fun making this city, and I'll still have a couple of episodes, it's definitely not the end of the series quite yet, I just feel like it might start to hold me back, and as soon as I feel like it's holding me back, I'd rather just start something completely new, perhaps leave this city a little bit unfinished, but it's mostly just been fun and a good learning experience, and I can still probably get some pretty good shots in of what I have at the moment. It's just that I want to broaden my horizon a bit more. I guess perhaps it's also the fact that at this point it's almost become a sort of routine, and I've gone into the way that these fields are just made and the parts of the city are made, and I feel like it would either be a good choice to move on and try some completely different things and get to the more experimental side of playing this game again, or perhaps build another Dutch city and completely rebuild it and plan it out a bit more to actually make something very realistic as an aim, and just make something which is more ambitious than the city really is. Because to get back to actually criticizing my own thing, there are a number of problems with the city which I have, of which the first one is really that the first couple of neighborhoods are just not good, and that's pretty much plain and simple that. I think the Cauliflower neighborhood too is pretty bad. It was all really made in the area in the time when I was not having too high ambitions with this thing and just figured I would just put a random series on YouTube and see what the hell would happen to it, and thinking that nobody would watch it anyway, and then suddenly this series actually got a following, which is really cool. But I like started this out and recorded the first couple of episodes with just a very casual approach to stuff, and I didn't really put as much thought or planning or even knowledge by looking certain stuff up as I do now. So I really feel like if I start over, I can do something much more ambitious and actually make something more realistic. But yeah, those are not problems strictly of the city. So yeah, the problem is that I feel the first neighborhoods aren't realistic. The setting is an issue because the like the Starfort Center is something that came in its current location in the game, and I've talked about this before, but it just doesn't really seem to have the best location for the entire map, or at least not the most logical location if you compare it to other ones. I would have liked to see it a little bit more closer to the river, as well as that smaller river which enters into it. And the general area around the Starfort was also not well planned by me myself, so it has a very sort of weird grassy limbo between the Starfort city center and the rest of the city, which doesn't quite feel like they're two separate cities, but it also doesn't quite feel like it really connects well, because even though the Starforts in real life are also quite disconnected from the city to which they belong to, it doesn't quite feel as uncertain of how they should really connect as it does in this city. And of course, as I've said before as well, there are just so many new things which have come out since that time that can make whatever Dutch city you're working on really look so much more realistic. And it doesn't just come from the game itself, like keys and things like that are definitely very useful. And the same goes for a theme. I would love to get into a new theme and actually get just proper grass and grass only, to be able to get grassy slopes and grass alongside roads and things like that. But also really I want to give the content a place, and any of the newer content, if I would completely build cities out of these different houses and these newer Dutch houses in this same map, I feel it would just break the immersion, because they look completely different. And this was almost made in a different part of the game, which comes with the game, which is currently modded and updated, definitely. But yeah, that's why I feel maybe this series had too high ambitions and just drags on a little bit too long. And I think that's perhaps the best way to word it. And maybe I should stop it from dragging on. That's basically the idea. But yeah, that said, it's not the end for this yet, and I've still got some episodes to burn through, and I still need to get back into this city, and it actually still works, so we don't have to worry about that. I was very worried after the last update, and it didn't work for a couple of days really, but it's been working now, and I haven't got the prop anarchy issue, I think, so that should be fine. And I'll wrap it up at some point in the future, and that may very well be a very soon point in the future, but in the meantime, I would actually also love to try some new stuff and experiment with new ideas and themes that I really want to give a try. And yeah, that's basically all the story about that. So I'm sorry this turned into a general update video, just because I had all of this farm footage to sort of talk over, in which not much else happened, and I think it's just sort of important to talk about the state of the series in general. So yeah, if you managed to get through all of that time and not be bored to death, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time, in which I'll be, wait a second, let me look up what I'm gonna do next time. Oh yeah, next time I'll be working on a new town, which is really one of my favorite parts of the city, really. So, hope to see you then.